But here's what he did.
Rhyme it. Do you know how to rhyme it? Oh, please just rhyme it.
Then he really gets into it.
Do you know how to rhyme it?
Yes, of course.
We will
you don't even have to think about it.
it. So let's rhyme it today. Rhyme it. Yes. We are gonna rhyme it. Just rhyme
That's
it.
where he just rammed it.
I like that.
Everybody,
Amazing.
I'm not going to remember any of it.
That's good. That's the way to go.
All over the Rams today and ram it.
I mean, now he's like on his feet.
How are you guys?
Whose house?
Wow.
Ram it.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Rams Brothers, the pod. I'm your host, Dean, and I'm joined by the other host of this show, Nick. And Nick, the theme song feels like a long ways back. How are you?
Yeah, it does, with all those Super Bowl clips in there. And the bolts of lightning just didn't strike as hard as it usually does. I do feel okay, though. The loss has showered over me. And it is nice that there have been a lot of other weird things that happen in the league during the time that, allows you to forget. The media doesn't care about us anymore. We lost the game. So what? It's week 1. Go 16-1,
How was the game? I know you were there. You got to enjoy the festivities, the other Rams fans. How was
I had an okay experience at the game. I definitely was I was sipping back on something that was not LaCroix, if you know what I mean. And at one point, this Bills fan got in my face and was like, "Fair weather fan, you probably you don't even know any of the St. Louis Rams that won that Super Bowl."
Oh, no.
And then just start rattling off all of them. And he kind of backed down after that. But so that was my own little personal win. The game itself was not a good time. Halftime with Ozzy Osbourne gave me a little faith, but overall, I mean, the stadium's beautiful and it was like a fun time. And my girlfriend graciously got me tickets as a surprise, so it was a whole fun event. But the cherry on top was more like a sauerkraut droppings in an ice cream.
Oh, I've never heard that analogy before, but it doesn't sound any good. You were a close encounter with a Bills fan, controversy. That's not always a fun situation to be in, but there's a lot of fights that happen in SoFi Stadium, and just
we apologize to each other.
I was going to say, you have some differences in the middle of a conversation, and you don't always want to be confrontational, but sometimes you talk about St. Louis Rams, the Buffalo Bills history. I'm sure you guys can go back and forth in terms of just overall pain and desire to win. So, I mean, there's a lot. I'm sure they can go into that conversation, but that's what this is. It's Los Angeles. It's a show. There's Ozzy Osbourne. There's The Rock. Everything is very much staged to where it puts a lot of pressure on the team, on the fans, on the franchise to win, right? And that's the situation that they put themselves in, that we've been progressively talking about over the last 3 years. But before we get into anything throughout this episode, the recap of the Buffalo Bills, I want to talk about BUSR. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to go to busr.ag, but they are offering a 100% bonus on first deposits up to $1,000 plus 25 casino chips. I wanted to do some kind of weird 5-team parlay yesterday. Really, what I should have done is just gone off of Nick's picks, because Nick's picks was scorching hot yesterday.
Not really. I mean, yesterday they were good, but for the Rams game,
forget the Rams game. I'm talking about the others. You're allowed, one here, one there. We'll forgive you. But any amount deposited to a new user, New Year's user account upon sign up will be equaled up to $1,000 max. So just go up to busr.ag. You place your deposit, you match up to $1,000, and you can place your bets on hopefully the Rams covering against the Atlanta Falcons plus 12 this Sunday.
It moved down quite a bit after we saw what Atlanta was capable of and how the Rams started out of the gate. I saw it now at 10, Rams minus 10. And honestly, it's a line that makes me favor Atlanta. But we'll get into that.
Well, yeah, we have plenty of time. We'll get into that in probably the next episode. But I want to just kind of go through what we saw on Thursday night. Obviously, you were there. I was there watching through the TV. Sean McVay was there, but he may have been covered in champagne still. We don't know. The offensive line I wanted to start with. I mean, you saw this in person. You were at the Tennessee game last year. So for whatever reason, it feels like when there's pressure and it's only a 4-man rush and Matthew Stafford's just trying to pick apart his own, it's when the Rams can get themselves in trouble. Like we saw it in Tennessee. It was a record number of sacks under Sean McVay. It was a record number of sacks, Nick, in a season opener since sacks were made official in 1963.
Wow.
So our fathers, if they're old enough, or our grandfathers, or Sean McVay's grandfather, watched Deacon Jones dominate the league back in 1963. The fearsome foursome was birthed. They created the term sack. And then 60 years later, the Los Angeles Rams are the ones who are on the wrong side of history for allowing the most sacks since the damn term was created.
Most sacks since the term was created in an opener. Without the Bills blitzing, might I add.
Yeah.
No blitz packages. They were able to do that with 4 rushing. So that is alarming, to say the least. You can really – and offensive line was something I felt really comfortable about going into this game. I mean, just like before we break everything down, what was your your one takeaway, general takeaway from the game? Like, how did you feel afterwards?
I think offensive creativity is always something that Sean McVay harps on, and his ability to adjust in games where he's had a long time to prepare for those specific games. My takeaway was that they didn't just not only look prepared, but it didn't seem like there was any kind of continuity with the offense. After the first half defensively, it felt like they kind of let up a little bit. They were able to kind of expose our zone. Jalen Ramsey came out and said they wanted to play a little bit of more man on defense. So I think there was just a lot of disagreement, a lot of frustration, and a lot of, I would just say, angst, right? Just because the season ended and it felt like you fast forward 6 months, you're already back in the driver's seat, and you have to come up with a game plan where you're obligated to dominate one of the best teams in football, obviously the Super Bowl favorite. It's concerning that, you have takeaways like the offensive line. 2 people get hurt, right? The offensive line isn't able to build continuity. They weren't able to establish a run game. Matthew Stafford's under pressure with 4 rushers, which is a situation historically with the Rams where he hasn't had any kind of success. So, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of stuff that you could be upset about. I didn't obviously name one specific thing there, but I feel like the offensive line, just to start off with them, that's how your offense operates, right? If you can establish dominance on the line of scrimmage, if you can get creative with how you're rotating players, when you're calling players in motion, you could establish the run game, whether it's in a zone look, that outside zone concept that the Rams have established so well over the past years. When you don't have the personnel to be able to do that offensively, especially up front on the offensive line, you're going to get yourself in situations where Matthew Stafford's going to have to force things. He's going to have to force things into his zone. He's going to have to force to Cooper Kupp. And we're all sitting there like, what is this offense? But it feels like they reverted back to a former stage.
One thing that was true about this Rams team, and last year's Rams team, I should say, when they got punched hard to start the game, they would not do a good job at coming out at a recovery punch. Like, it's reminded me so much of November football, 2021 Rams. That was pitiful, where they would just be getting like one touchdown early by the other team, and then it seems like we forget how to play football altogether, where it's like panicking offense, where it's like squeezing stuff in the holes. And then the defense is just getting smoked out of dink and dunks. It was, it was really, really difficult. And especially in the beginning when you have all those turnovers and you don't capitalize on any of them really correctly. It was just, it never felt like they were even in the game, even when they tied it up at halftime. Alarming is a good word, I think. Eye-opening, awakening, just a lot of mind-boggling, a lot of stuff that you got to put a microscope under, which is what we're about to do. But it's doesn't give you a lot of faith, but it's week 1.
Yeah, it's a long season.
Cobwebs. The Bengals lost to the Steelers. Like, it's not like they like blew it to like a bad team.
Right. The 49ers lost to the Bears.
Yeah,
Yep. Arizona got crushed by Kansas City.
It's more just like, and I know I do this a lot because maybe it's because our first year of the podcast, but the 2018 Rams like always felt like they were in every game. And last year, not even the Super Bowl champ Rams felt like they were in every game. If you got them early good, it felt like it was over then. I don't remember a huge comeback. I remember fourth quarter comebacks when the games were close. That's a different story. I'm talking about like 14-point deficit comebacks like that the Lions were able to overcome last week. But it seems like, and like the teams like the Colts. But for some reason, Sean McVay went down like 2 scores, panics like me when I play Madden.
I think that's the issue. It's when you're able to rush 4 pass rushers, that's it. And you have players like David Edwards coming out and saying, I don't feel like we got into a rhythm offensively. There were mistakes made up front that really cost drives, penalties. They'd start moving the ball, and then there was a false start, or there were too many men on the field. Like, it wasn't clean football whatsoever. And when your quarterback gets hit, 15 of how many dropbacks? 49 dropbacks. Von Miller with a pair of sacks. We were talking about AJ Espenza and Jordan Phillips and Ed Oliver. Right? These are all good players. Ed Oliver was nasty before their injury, and Jordan Phillips looked like he's right back in Buffalo, like he didn't miss any time. Like, it's a tough group of pass rushers coming at you relentlessly. But if anything is encouraging, right, you could look to the right side of the offensive line. You could look to Rob Havenstein and Coleman Shelton. You could look to Coleman Shelton, who's going to fill in for Brian Allen at center and snap with his left hand as Brian Allen's getting surgery on his knee. You could look to Trayman Akram, who's going to slide in at right guard. I loved what McVay said about Trayman Akram. He said that on the Coach McVay show, he has a really good look in his eye. He's had a really good look in his eye all throughout training camp. It's not just about getting excited about the potential depth on this team, but it's an opportunity to showcase the fact that there are maybe some other players in the pipeline that you can fill gaps internally that could eventually become starters and contribute to this offense as a whole. So you want to be able to kind of look at some of those other things, put a microscope on it. Maybe it's not the worst thing in the world, right? That we're having some issues, that we're shifting up the offensive line. We'll get a couple of different looks here early on, like AJ Jackson, right? Going back to the Minnesota game last year where he played left tackle. You might get some opportunities with some of these other guys where you could actually build some continuity with the current set of offensive linemen that you do have. If not, you have to look to somebody like Andrew Whitworth, or you have to look to somebody else that's an experienced veteran that can come in and fill a gap, because it gets scary. Like it really does.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, yeah. And me watching the game in person, seeing the pocket collapse in real time, I think, at least from where I was, is harder to identify than like a missed throw or quick interceptions. I something about being there, because I'm texting you and Dad, and then you guys are responding, and you're like, yeah, I mean, the offensive line is collapsing, and like, it's not even what I was noticing, honestly. I mean, because your eyes are down the field. Your eyes
are down the field. You're looking at Allen Robinson. You're looking at Cooper Kupp. And you're trying to figure out ways for those kind of guys to exploit zones, because that's what the Buffalo Bills were doing. We're sitting in a zone and just hoping that Cooper Kupp wasn't able to pick them apart, because it felt like they had no other options. Nick, I wanted to see them. Like, we talked about this last year so many times, but in games like the 49ers or the Packers or the Titans from last year, like, we wanted to see them switch gears a little bit on offense in these types of games where they get back into those larger personnel groupings. I think they called it elephant personnel last year, where they're stacking extra offensive linemen. You have quasi tight ends and receivers on the line of scrimmage. But McVay talked about this on the Coach McVay show. You can't really do that when you're trailing in the second half. My interpretation of that was, when you have an opportunity and you have a takeaway, like, the Bills were just giving you turnovers at that point in the first half, and our defense was creating them. You have to be able to get a little bit creative and not just stick to your initial game plan, and to be able to say, hey, look, Buffalo controlled the clock in that first series. They ran however many 8 minutes off the clock in the first series.
And like, no big plays too.
Right.
It was just like, let's not let Aaron Donald hit this guy, and let's get it out of Josh Allen's hands early.
Right.
So like which is something that kind of, that was part of what Raheem would do last year. It was like that bend, don't break. It's like, we'll give you that all day.
And
But-
Ramsey mentioned that too.
But you're not going to be able to go over the top on us, and you're not going to be able. And then they did. Ramsey didn't really have the best game, but I didn't know that McVay. He said that you can't really do that when you're trailing in the second half. I wonder how much of his arsenal is stripped down when he's trailing in the second half, and what can he actually pull? I mean, a lot of it, if not all of it, can come back to the run game, which was all Henderson, and he had a couple big 5-yard runs. I mean, good second downs and whatnot to put us in better position. But outside of that, I mean, Cam Akers, 3 carries, 0 yards, 0 touchdowns. That clip is surfacing online where he runs away from the defender. Probably had a rollout, which was probably the design play. But you have to kind of know that if this guy's coming, you got to at least chip him. Then Kareem Williams goes down on the first play of the game and is out.
Kyron was out on the first play of the game. I was thinking to myself, where is where's Jake Funk in that situation? Or where is there another special teams player that can go get run on the first series of the game? If you're expecting Kyron Williams to be a contributor, he's coming off of a foot injury, and now he's stuck with a high ankle sprain, which could be an IR designation, which could put him out 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks. We don't even know. So it puts you in an awkward situation. Then you're watching the Chargers game against the Raiders, and you're seeing Sony Michel just jump into an offense and contribute automaday. There's some concern. There is.
They could have picked him up so easily, and they trusted what they had, but you don't. Clearly there has, and I said this all off season, the magician Joe Bluth act that McVay plays with his running backs is always questionable, and you never get concrete information on these guys. And that's why you got people texting me pissed off that Cam Akers didn't get any yards in their fantasy league. And I told him that he was a good keeper pick for them.
I did too. Understandably so. This is not something that anybody had any idea that was coming. Nobody knew that Cam Akers was going to have 3 carries for 0 yards and 0 touchdowns.
There has to be, there has to be something going on with him, right?
It feels like if you get into Sean McVay's doghouse as a running back, it's very, very difficult to get out of it. And that's my biggest concern. First of all, how did Cam Akers get into the doghouse? Was it something that he displayed in camp? Was it his limited snaps? Because he didn't really have an opportunity to showcase what he's capable of. He's fully healthy. He's in a great offense. So what did he do? What did he say? How did he rub Sean McVay the wrong way? Because it wasn't just Darrell Henderson and matchups and situations. And Henderson had 119 yards against the Bills the last time that they played. That wasn't it.
I'll tell you what it was. I know what it is.
What is it? Let's hear it.
He's not ready. He's not healthy. He's not 100%.
I mean, everything that I've read, I've heard, I've listened to suggests he's 100%.
I can't trust it. Can't trust it. They told us Gurley was 100% in the Super Bowl, and now you have a whole different game plan if he's 100% in that game.
Yeah, and you know what? If they don't say that he is hurt or if he still has a nagging lower body injury, then you can theoretically keep him in the game plan, use him whenever you would like, but then also take into consideration Buffalo still has to game plan for Cam Akers. So I guess there was that element of you don't want to show your hand. And if there is some kind of nagging injury, I don't think that Sean McVay went about it the right way, right? He was talking about capitalizing on opportunities, unless there's some internal dialogue that's happening between those two guys where it's like, hey, Cam, I'm just going to use you as an example in press conferences. I'm going to throw you under the bus. You and I are fine. You're going to be integrated into the offense once you're fully healthy. I don't know if that's happening. If it's not, then it's somewhat concerning for Cam Akers' future.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I just think he's not 100%, and McVay is going to hold his cards close to his chest. But I think it's obvious to anybody who knows the team that he, after you saw Darrell out there, consistently, you're like, okay, this is who we got tonight. Yeah. And this is who we had today. And it was good for people that had Darrell as their flex, which I did. But I mean, it's not like he's even scored you a touchdown, so it wasn't that fantastic. But
Yeah.
well,
I just felt like with the offense, like you want to see things like ball control, creativity, execution. And it just looked like Stafford. I'm sure you saw this in person. Looked like Stafford was trying to just play catch with Cooper Kupp against 6 defensive backs. Like if you can figure out a way, and they did a good job of this in the Super Bowl when they couldn't run the ball with Darrell Henderson as a pass catcher, even if you can get them out of their zone shell and into some man, or use your running backs as pass catchers out of the backfield, or get Allen Robinson on a screen, or get your guys in motion. That's all stuff that I think is going to eventually come to light. Will definitely come to light against Atlanta. But instead, like this 11.5 personnel thing that they have going on, where they like to call it 11.5 personnel because they feel like they have a couple of receivers that are kind of quasi tight ends. But how about some 12? How about some 13? We have Higbee, we have Hopkins, we have Skoranek. They're all capable of playing tight ends 1, 2, and 3. Like get tough on the line of scrimmage, complete short yards, passes, quick game stuff. Like that's what they were so good at with Jared Goff, was play action rollouts and keeping him under center and giving him optionality with a running back by his side when he's in the shotgun, not constantly an empty. That's what they do with Josh Allen. And he's on his way to potentially becoming the MVP of the league. So,
yeah.
I think Ken Dorsey and Sean McDermott do a great job with that offense. I think they have the personnel to do it too now. You saw that offensive line win plenty of times up front. Didn't allow a ton of pressure after the first half when Donald and both Bobby Wagner had sacks. But, I mean, this is all stuff. This is, again, like we go back to this constantly. Like there's a week here and there. That's why I'm not that worried in the grand scheme. There's weeks here, there, San Francisco, Tennessee, Green Bay, where it feels like they don't have any kind of layer to their offense. It feels like it's one single thing. It's 11 personnel 100% of the time, 3 receivers, 1 running back, 1 tight end. And of course you can get creative with how that's being manufactured. But if you're, you got players like Allen Robinson and Cooper Kupp, like be able to move those guys around, get them in space and exploit zones with their own natural abilities and get them yards after the catch. It will come. It just didn't happen at all in Buffalo.
Yeah. Something I do wish he would bring back some of the playbook that he had with Goff, because just kind of mix them a little bit together. I know, like he pretty much threw it out last year, right? He's like, I have somebody that I can do exactly what I want to do. But, Stafford has his limitations as well. Most quarterbacks do.
Yeah, but you're always adding. You're always innovating. Like that's why Sean McVay is so great, right? It hasn't been one consistent thing. He has adapted his offense to what his personnel looks like, what his quarterback looks like, what his offensive line looks like. Yeah. I have confidence he'll do the same thing on Sunday against the Falcons. But like Allen Robinson being targeted twice on 45 routes, which is a 4.4% target rate. That was the lowest of his entire career. Like, and Stafford comes out and says, I think they maybe played 2 snaps in man. They played a lot of zone. They clouded the boundary quite a bit. Like Allen saw a lot of cover too, just in general. So whenever Stafford felt like, okay, there's, might be able to get the ball to Allen Robinson here, there's a too high shell with Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde at the top, just waiting for him to take off or waiting for him to make a catch and try and run with the ball. So just a better game plan, just a much better game plan. I mean, Allen Robinson's not a big yards after the catch guy. Like he was towards the bottom last year, but like you miss Van Jefferson, you miss Odell Beckham Jr. You miss some of those short yardage pass catchers who can make something happen in space.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, you miss OBJ. I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say. He was a game changer out there. I mean, in the Super Bowl, if he stays healthy, I still think it was going to be a blowout because of how, you don't know which guy to put Eli Apple on. Both of them can pop off. And while I do think Robinson's going to need some time to get adjusted with Stafford and the system and figuring all that out, it definitely stunts your excitement for 9-1. But I do still, there is still potential. I still think he is a good flex guy to have on your team. Yeah. And especially against a team like the Falcons, like I'm sure he will, probably get in the end zone in that game. That would be like a nice little prop bet maybe.
Sure.
But yeah, but still, Higbee has to be more involved. Henderson on like a catch, like a little bootleg and get him down the side. Like, you have to be more creative,
right?
Especially when they're giving you so much leeway with what they were running. I mean, they didn't blitz once. Like, you have to know what you can kind of get accomplished in that. And then they didn't have to blitz, and maybe they bring that package if they need it, but they didn't even need it. So just a little more creativity, a little adjustment, particularly because you luckily are tied at halftime and you saw 0 adjustments.
And they got the ball at the half.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, just a perfect situation to be in. You figured out a way to tie the game at the halftime because Matt Gay can kick a 57-yarder or make it go 75 yards right down the middle. And you guys got some momentum going in the locker room, and that's how you come out in the second half is extremely discouraging. But like to Higbee point, miscommunication on a route that led to an interception. I remember in the third quarter, he dropped a pass. It looked like it hit him right in the middle of the eyes, like shot right in the middle of his face mask, bounced right off and hit the ground.
Yeah.
Like, that's not Tyler Higbee. So that's what's concerning.
Stuff like that I contribute to week one. Week
Sure.
one is just kind of like a nightmare. So you kind of got to let that stuff brush off. It wasn't a nightmare for Buffalo, I'll tell you that. But every now and then a team like Chicago beats San Francisco week one.
Sure.
My Trey Lance take, I also think, is right on the money.
I think it's closer to your take than it is my take.
Yeah, here nor there.
Sure.
But.
Yeah. We'll get to him. So 49ers will be coming up in a couple of weeks. I think the biggest thing with the offense too, and we'll wrap up the offense, move over to the defense, just wasted opportunity, right? Terrell Lewis and Troy Hill both had interceptions, and the Rams forced 2 fumbles. Like, when Stafford has seen the most success in his career with the Rams, it's not when they're bringing just 4 players. Like, meaning when players are dropped into coverage, his completion percentage drops about 74%. Like, average throws from under center and shotgun, 74% drop off in terms of completion rate when only 4 players are rushing and are getting home. And it's 64% is his EPA and his expected point average, like, are just continuously plummeting. Like, percentages are so much worse when there's only 4 players rushing. We posted this last year on November 4th of last year, right after the Rams improved to 7-1. Matthew Stafford was leading the league by a substantial margin in EPA, which is expected points added. So he was at a plus 114.3 EPA, while Dak Prescott, who was in second place at the time, this is the beginning of November, 7-1, was a plus 62.2 EPA. So there was a time where Matthew Stafford was playing like the unanimous MVP selection. And the reason why I say that is because everybody that has the highest EPA in the league since 2016 went on to win the MVP of the league. Josh Allen's going to own that right now. So when you go into this game believing that you could pass your way out of a Buffalo 2-high shell, because players like Cooper Kupp and Allen Robinson, who can create their own variations of routes and beat zones, like, that's not necessarily a great game plan. That leads to 0 continuity, a massive lack of rhythm. And you had opportunity, like rookies on the field, no Trey Davis, right? Or Trey White, right? So that's the kind of situation you put yourself in that you have to be able to figure out a way to get out of it. They also believed their offensive line was talented enough to prevent a 4-man rush, despite the fact that Buffalo was getting creative with how they were rushing. It was mostly just simultaneously rotating fresh pass rushers like it was nobody's business. But Matthew Stafford actually does excel when there's pressure. Like, he gets rid of the ball on average in 2 seconds when the blitz is coming because he knows that there's a vacancy in a zone or a mismatch in man. He doesn't excel when the defense is able to drop 7 players in coverage and get him into 3 seconds and get them in 3 seconds, because nobody excels in that situation. Tom Brady doesn't excel in that situation. So the key is having that disciplined zone the way Buffalo did and just getting pressure while rushing 4. The Bills did it with ease. And when you can do an awesome job of disguising coverage down the field, as good defenses do, that's when you're able to lock into the zone, and you could switch up looks. You could switch to man at the last second. There's good communication between defensive backs. They haven't let up a lot of big plays. We have to figure out a way to get out of it.
Yeah.
There's a chance. It's going to be a little bit of a journey.
Yeah. Just kind of to speak on that Matthew Stafford MVP thing last year. While you were going into that, I did the liberty of looking into the schedule last year, right? These were the games. Chicago Bears, easy win. Colts, easy win. Bucks, tough game, tough win. Definitely showed his stuff. That's where the conversations happen. Lose
Arizona.
bad to Arizona. And then you beat a struggling Seahawks team, a crappy Giants team. I don't even remember them playing the Giants. And then the Lions. And then the Texans. So obviously,
that schedule, man.
Yeah, that was just a gift. And Stafford was one of these MVP guys. And then it was loss to Titans, loss to Niners, loss to the Packers. That was like the true gauntlet. And
then what happens after that?
Yeah, well, yeah, after that, obviously. But just for these MVP talks, and then the Bills this year, they have Titans, Dolphins, Ravens, Steelers, Chiefs, Packers. So, and us where they won handsomely. So the script is out for Josh Allen to be on top of that for a long time, but you never know. It's just it's going to be in flux. And you know what? You kind of don't want to win the MVP, truthfully, because when you win the MVP, you almost never also win the Super Bowl.
True.
Last time that happened with us, baby.
Yeah. What, really? Kurt Warner?
Kurt Warner.
Last time an MVP won a Super Bowl was Kurt Warner?
I'm pretty sure.
I feel like Tom Brady had to have done it at least once.
I don't think any of his MVP seasons were when they won.
Manning? Either Manning? No, I don't know. Maybe you're right.
Well, Eli has never won an MVP award. So he won. He's won 2 Super Bowl MVPs, but
2 Super Bowl MVPs. No, I'll still never believe that.
Glorious. One of the coolest things.
Absolutely glorious. I think there's another Manning stat built into this, the back half of this.
How do you feel about that cast, the Manning cast?
Love it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think it's great.
I tend to switch back to both.
I would actually rather somehow, if they could be in a booth, but they're dressed down, they could have wings and have a couple of drinks and just like casually like hang out with some friends. Maybe it's a little bit better, but because it's like a cast, you know what I mean? And it's during a live football game.
And it's like the game's like cut off.
Yeah.
Like it's like half of the TV. Like it should be, you know.
Yeah, like I don't need to see their faces the whole time.
Yeah.
But like I want to see
who was that?
The game.
Who was the guy that was like, we need Eli and Peyton to show their faces the whole time? That's not needed. Like people like podcasts, and they joke about his forehead like every 2 minutes. And then on the new Santa Claus show with Tim Allen, Peyton Manning is in the trailer, and there's a joke about his forehead in the trailer. And come on, man. Get me on the staff. I will not give you one of those bad forehead jokes. We'll make it better. We'll give you more.
Yeah, really. Like that's like the lowest of the low in terms of joke totem pole.
I mean, it's clearly something he's comfortable with because he talks about it quite often.
Like if Tim Allen was like throwing snowballs and then he was like making fun of Peyton Manning's arm towards the end of his career, probably a better joke.
You see, you came up with that just now.
Just now on the spot.
It's great.
Thank you. I was thinking about Buddy the Elf. That scene where he's just launching snowballs. Okay. But to the defense. Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald is still Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald was getting pressure. Aaron Donald getting pressure is the norm. But good teams have found ways to negate Aaron Donald, and it's by having a fast-paced offense with a quarterback who's decisive and can get the ball out of his hand fast. We've seen it. If Jimmy G holds the ball for 2.5 seconds versus 3 in the NFC Championship game, Lord knows how the outcome of that game is decided. But he holds on for 3 seconds. Donald gets to him and changes the whole outcome of the Rams' history. But Donald, what I love about Aaron Donald, and this is just the most ridiculous, insane, sickening stat that I've ever heard. He has posted the #1 pass rush win rate at 27.8%. He has never finished anywhere but first in the category as a defensive tackle. That stat is per Seth Walder of ESPN. So I say that because Aaron Donald did his job. Aaron Donald always does his job. But there was nothing to write home about the rest of the defensive line. Leonard Floyd, Justin Hollins, created 0 pressures. What were you going to say there?
No, I mean, like just the rest of the defensive front, they're not getting enough glory. But then that's the game that the Bills designed. That's what they went after.
Sure. Yeah. You negate the pass rush. Like I saw 5.3% in terms of pressure rate against the Rams on Thursday. Like that's a low pressure rate. Like if you're going to win football games, that's why you signed Von Miller. That's why you signed big time edge rushers and players to play alongside of Aaron Donald to get that pressure rate up. His lowest pressure rate in 2021 was 10.7%. Rams were 5 percentage points lower than that. And the season average was 26%. So people were getting to him. The Jaguars got to him in a couple of games. Like the league was getting to Josh Allen and was getting him on the ground and creating pressure, making him use his legs. That pressure number, I have to say, 5.3% is arbitrary, as PFF has it up to like 18%. But I just feel like they make up numbers sometimes. I feel like it was closer to 5.3% pressure rate. And when you're able to create 2 sacks in the first half, 1 fumble recovery and 2 interceptions, you should figure out a way to be able to build on that in the second half. And we saw the opposite coming out of the tunnel.
Yeah.
That's scary.
The whole defensive roller coaster that we went through, where you're getting all these turnovers and you're feeling confident that this defense will be able to at least make this interesting. And then for the offense to just lay egg after egg. I don't blame the defense for being like tired in the second half because they're on the field so often. And you're a Sean McVay Wonder Boy team. You have to have a better offense with this roster. And it's just so crazy that immediately it just went right back to the Cooper Kupp show. And that's all that we had. And I was like, that was the Super Bowl, man. Like, we have more. You have Allen Robinson. Not to keep going on the offense, but just the performance of the defense, although it like on paper and the final score makes it look like it was really bad, if the offense could have at least taken time off the clock during those turnovers, I think you have a completely different game. But,
perfectly spot on take. Like, that's why we spent a half hour on the offense in this podcast.
Yeah.
Because the defense, like, defensive backs, Jalen Ramsey is trying to diagnose everything that went wrong with the Rams' defense in his podcast. Like, he was talking about how they were like attacking their zones and liked the soft spots in their zones and kept going at them. And Ramsey was talking about, obviously we got to watch the film, but he would have liked to play a little bit more man, where I guess he felt like he had less responsibility, could focus more on Diggs. And you talked about this, Nick, in the beginning of the episode. Jalen Ramsey said we kind of had like that bend don't break mentality a lot because they were driving the ball, they weren't scoring. Like Rams were getting the turnovers, the interceptions, whatever it was early on in the first half, and the Bills still weren't scoring. So they thought that bend don't break methodology and that soft zone where defensive backs are 10, 11 yards off of receivers at the line of scrimmage, they thought that was working. And again, it starts with the offense. Like if the defense wasn't on the field as much as they were in the second half, maybe Raheem Morris feels like, okay, our legs are fresher. We have an opportunity to switch up the defense. We can go to man. We can let some of our big-time players run with some of their big-time players. But when you're just gassed and in 97-degree temperatures on that field after The Rock's coming out, after Ozzy Osbourne's coming out, like that's a Super Bowl in its own to have to play after that half. So
that is something that I'm glad you said that, because throughout the theatrics, they have a John Hamm introduction video. They have The Rock at the game. You have an Ozzy Osbourne performance at halftime. And while it is quite the spectacle, it does make it really feel like everything is on the line.
Yeah.
Which is truly scary when you're at the game and, you're letting yourself live and die on these snaps, which you should never do, but we all do because we're all fans. But yeah, it's the theatrics of it. You could make a case that they heard it. The lights are very, very, very bright, and I'm sure they will be like every single game. So
yeah, dude, there's something about that stadium, those bright lights. Like you see players in in crunch time. You saw it in the Chargers and the Raiders game. Like you see fights after the game. Like there's so much energy in that stadium because everybody wants to be a part of this spectacle. And it does feel like a show. It feels like a wrestling match. Like there's a lot going on and it's overwhelming. And when you have somebody like, and this is where some of the controversy can start, the Cam Akers stuff, Jalen Ramsey coming out after the game and talking about it on his own podcasts, like that's going to prompt discussion with Raheem Morris, and that's going to prompt discussion with Sean McVay, and reporters are going to ask a lot of uncomfortable questions. And that can't all happen in the first week of the season when there's this much drama and support around a team that just won the Super Bowl. Like in that first half of this game, Josh Allen completed 17 of 20 passes for 95 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and a passer rating of 86.2. Like that's right where you want them. Like they've done a really good job in the first half of just kind of negating what that offense was capable of doing by just kind of shrinking it and keeping everything in front of them, which is kind of what the Buffalo Bills' intention was too. But then Ramsey's nightmare kind of starts all over. Just quick slant after quick slant, and then eventually just kind of baiting them and then being able to take advantage of it later on in the game. You just don't want too many of these big personnel. And that was the fear last year was with the dream team methodology. You don't want too many of these stars like building conspiracy and talking drama about the teams, about the coaches. And that's a concern because
the
it's
Rams
Los Angeles,
put themselves there,
right?
though.
Yeah, sure.
They do, because you have I bring this up so much. When you have your coach in the hype video, he is a marquee, top build, number 1 through 5 on the call sheet guy. And that's going to be adding to any kind of drama.
Yeah.
Which is never a good thing on any kind of team. You don't want to be the team that is leading the league in like Vanity Fair topics. I'm looking at you, Los Angeles Lakers. But yeah, it's like those, like so much of what football gives you is a team, and you just harken back to that Belichickian mentality where it's just like, do your job and you will not have any problems. And that's why everybody doubted us last year so heavy too, because it was like, why are you bringing in all these all-stars? Good luck. It never works. But when you have people on your team that can rally even the biggest of egos, then you like an Aaron Donald, who's a silent guardian god, things can be a little different. But magic has to come to an end at some point.
No, it's not yet. It's not happening yet.
No, I'm not saying yet, but with when you start bumping elbows with guys that make a lot of money and are really good at what they do and just won, things are going to get dicey. That's all I'm saying.
Well, winning changes everything.
You can clearly see a blueprint, hopefully a blueprint that is never foretold, but a blueprint of a collapse on this team. You could see it from the top down, crumbling. I mean, you take off the fan glasses for a second and you just think of, everybody kind of being the worst version of themselves. And you look at where November had us last year. And, I think no matter what, they'll be able to be a strong team throughout the entire year, 100%. Or maybe it's one of those like really, really rocky starts that just humbles the crap out of everybody.
You could say shit.
Yeah, I didn't want to.
After that big Disney sponsorship on the Knicks Picks theme song.
Yeah, I'm talking to them now. They said we might have enough for a whole nother theme song. So,
how about that? And this one must have been very profitable that you brought to the table.
Yeah.
So the reason why I think you say that, and you could see the top crumbling, although I don't think that's the case, and I don't think other Rams fans should feel that way yet. And I know that you're not saying that either. But when you watch things and then statistics come out, and it becomes kind of like a league phenomenon, that 21-point deficit is the largest by a defending Super Bowl champion in a season opener since 2013, when the Baltimore Ravens lost to the Broncos 49-27. And that was Denver's Peyton Manning matching the NFL record with 7 touchdowns, and then would go on to be named the league MVP. And I believe they lost. Was that the year that they lost in the Super Bowl to not sure who they lost to, but obviously they beat Carolina. So I'm wondering if that was a couple years before, then they ended up going back. So, not that I don't think I think the Los
Seattle.
Angeles Rams
Seattle. They lost to Seattle.
Seattle, right? They got their ass kicked by Seattle. That's right. So I don't think that the Rams are any version of the 2013 Baltimore Ravens. But when you see stuff like that, there's reason to be concerned. And when the offensive line isn't playing the way that they should, when Aaron Donald's seemingly the only player that's making an impact on defense, although I thought Bobby Wagner was great in that game, there's reason to be concerned. But once all of this stuff gets cleaned up and they have 10 days to do it, they've had already 4 or 5 days to do so. I think we're going to be in a much better position, and everybody will be loving their Los Angeles Rams again.
Yeah, and look, we love the Rams.
No, but I mean,
everybody still loves them. It's just right now you're just kind of looking at them like, what happened to you?
Well, it's also like nobody remembers what losing really feels like.
Well,
like,
not after you just win the Super Bowl.
Really, your team hasn't been under 500 since Sean McVay has joined the Los Angeles Rams. Like, we've never had a losing record in 5 years. I mean, we've been blessed with football greatness, but, and it's a big but, there's some legacy things that are being built in. There's some greatness throughout the history of the league things that can be built in if the ship could be righted. So while it wasn't a perfect game, there's a situation now that has presented itself, and McVay has shown historically that he can correct things, bring them to the table, and activate them in real time. I'm hopeful. I love him, but he makes mistakes like all good men do.
Yeah. How about this? I just got a text.
Let's hear it.
Joel McHale joke tonight on the Manning Cast. Hey, Peyton, what's bigger, your forehead or John Elway's teeth? That's actually that's a good joke because you're using exactly what the people think you're going to bring up, and then you bring in something else, and then it's a tweet now. I'm looking at the tweet, and McHale said he didn't answer.
Well, it was quick enough too. It wasn't like a long, drawn out, exaggerated joke about his forehead. It was a quip, not a slope.
Joel McHale, one of the funniest dudes right now.
Indeed.
Jeff,
I know you love your community.
Yeah.
Rams house community, got to come together. We need you guys.
Well, when are you coming out here to watch a game with us, brother?
Eventually, when all of our Twitter fans will know, and our followers will know, listeners of the pod will know that I'm making an entrance. Yeah,
it was. I mean, the game is fun, obviously, when you're there with Rams fans. It's just that stadium, how Los Angeles is. If it's not a Dodgers game, you're going to have people you're going to have both fans. So I'll do a Who's House chant, and it gets granted by whatever the Bills are doing. I don't even know what their thing is. They're doing something like Bills Town. I don't even know. It was dumb. But yeah, you just never really feel like you're dominating. And I feel like every single game I go to, they lose. Unless I'm with you. Every game you've been to, they win. So I can't go to a game by myself. Rams fans are like, "Oh, Nicky's going. Take the other team." But seriously, Cardinals last year, Titans last year. I went to the Lions game, so that was a win. But I was there with Dean.
Lions Super Bowl. That's all I got. I'll be back though. That's all we got for this episode, but we'll be back on Thursday for some more Rams Brothers.
We're going to do an Atlanta preview, and Nick's picks may have a new theme song. We don't know.
Nicky's picks.
Yeah. I know it was a hit, but I don't like to mull in the past, What's the line? Champions or Super Bowl winners like to hang on to the past, but Super Bowl forwarders keep going forward. I know that's not what it was, but it was. I
don't have it up.
Yeah,
something along those lines.
I don't know. I don't have it up.
All right, Rams fans, we love you. Hang tight. More good.
Yeah, you know what? Don't let the bad vibes take over your week. I mean, I know we're kind of late to that, but seriously. We are good. We are the Los Angeles Rams. We are the Super Bowl winners. We get to say that all year until February. And you know what? We might be able to get to say it all next year. So just keep your heads high. The heat wave's going down in California. and keep the horns up. Whose house? Rams house, baby.
We're on to Atlanta.
On to
Peace.
Atlanta.